live interview already before sober. Bam, staring right into the window of the soul of the internet. We have Michelle Brady Stone here. Now, Michelle Brady Stone, you and I did part 1 6 months ago, and I have to let you know that I ended up shaving my head, and it has grown back since then.
Oh,
That's how long it's been.
okay.
And people have.
I got a haircut. I cut about 6 inches off, so we're going opposite directions.
And you did shave, and I did. And so, we're going to be doing a bunch of Q&A today, but like, here's one thing that I want to point out. You're about, what, a year and 3 months into the podcast, 132 Problems.
I think so.
Yeah, because it was episode 54. You hit the 1 year mark.
Look at you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
you hit the 1 year mark, and you ended up posting that video like the day after Valentine's Day, the day before your birthday.
Yep.
Oh,
right in there.
All that fun stuff right there. Now, since you and I have talked last, you've interviewed like heavy hitters on the topic of polygamy within the church and even outside of the church.
Yeah.
Author Patrick Mason, he's got quite a resume. Look at that one. Brian C. Hales, and that was a fun one. He's
that
like,
was.
Are you sure you're supposed to be here? But people in general, myself included, have really appreciated your willingness to engage with people that you disagree with. Todd Compton, Julie Rowe, Whitney Horning, and I have to point this out. Your interview,
Julie Hanks.
Julie Hanks.
Let's not Julie Rowe.
I got the wrong one.
That's okay.
The other
Just
Julie.
clarifying.
There was a Julie in there somewhere.
Maybe.
Now, you had a wonderful conversation with Mark Tensmeyer. A funny thing.
That was a difficult one. That wasn't one of my favorites.
So I know Mark. He and I used to do sales together like a 14 or 15 years, about 15 years ago. We spent a summer doing sales together. But he's an interesting one on this topic. He's probably one of the amateurs who's most informed.
Yeah.
And most informed, but definitely.
Yeah, Jeremy Hoop he and I are starting to do a series together, actually looking more into specifically Joseph's polygamy, because he's more expert on that topic than I am, so he's willing to share.
And it's wonderful. So let me ask a little bit. I'm going to get into some of the questions. You and I have a part 1 of the interview talking about your upbringing, moving into kind of recognizing how God was guiding you in your life. I want to ask a little bit though, what was the inspiration to take on this topic? Because you were fully sold on the history that I've been told, polygamy commandment from God to the Latter-day Saints. How did this topic become such a dominant part of what you're willing to put out publicly?
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Well, actually, okay, I'm trying to decide how much of this story to tell.
And
do you want long form or short?
So here's what I'm doing right now. Managing moderation. So I'm trying to make sure that I've got this. I want to look at the live chat. I might have to look at somewhere all messages are visible. Okay. So anybody who's here right now, I've got some questions that were already submitted beforehand. Put them inside of the chat, and I'll even be manning it one other way. Yeah, it's live, so guys, just deal with me picking up stuff. Let's do this. Do a tap dance. So that way I'll be able to see that. Give us a. Oh, boom. Okay, if somebody would do this, just put something in the chat, anything in the live chat, just so I know that it's totally happening. Boom. And any other questions that you have, put inside of here. It's live. Oh, boom, and it's totally working. Okay. Did you get broad? Were you so eager to engage in this, or was it more kicking and screaming and pulling of teeth? Well, weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth.
It's funny. I've for many years known there were things that I was supposed to do. Like I felt, but I was always having babies, right? And so I was supposed to have a baby, and I was like, Lord, how am I supposed to?
Not many make it into the double digits.
While I'm yeah. Well, our internet is baker's dozen, as you know, that's our kids. So, anyway, so I was always like, what do you want me to do? And I have my list of books I need to write is very long, that are fully outlined. And, and I have different topics that I've presented on, but I always couldn't jump into it while being a full-time homeschooling mom of a very large family. Right. So interestingly, it was a really turning point when we had our little 12th and our 13th. And so I had some really sacred experiences around that, and had the Lord just kind of show me my new path. This is the new path I'm on. And it was interesting because it was actually while I was expecting my 12th. Those whole couple of years were very, very difficult. And even before my little 12th was born. And there was a real low point when I was expecting my 12th. I won't go into all the details, but it was a low point. And I had, I didn't know how you reach those points where you don't know how life can go forward. It was really
Yeah.
bad, and I had this spirit come over me that was, I guess I can call it the wisdom of ages, like the just this wisdom that came and taught me, like gave me this peace and taught me this depth of understanding and knowledge of how to deal with what I was currently dealing with in my life, and how to go forward, right? And it's hard to explain, but it really healed me from what was I was experiencing at that point. And when I was praying about it the next day, I just had this complete awareness that it was that it was the polygamist women, that it was the wisdom that these women had gained, and the struggle I was carrying was actually in part their struggle. Like
Yeah.
the depth of emotion I was feeling wasn't just mine; it was theirs
Did
too.
it
If that
feel
makes
did it
sense.
feel ancestral?
Um, I don't even know. Like I kind of just think it was the collective wisdom of of our polygamist ancestors. I don't know that it was my polygamous ancestors. It felt like it was our polygamous ancestors, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
And and I was so profoundly thankful and felt like, what can I do to serve you in return? What can I, like, how
Yeah.
can I pay you back? And I was just told, tell other women.
Yeah.
Powerfully told, tell other women. And so I knew, and I had already had the idea come to mind of, oh, I would love to do 132 problems. Like once I started learning about polygamy, actually, is that what you were asking? Is how
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
mind
yeah.
changed on polygamy, or why I'm doing the
Mainly, like,
podcast?
what got into it? So you've answered, like, what got you into it? You felt like
Yeah,
tell
I
others.
was told tell other women, and then in 2022 when I started, I just one day was told it's time,
Yeah.
and I compare it because I'm technologically I'm like not gifted,
See,
and
the nice thing is, like, most of the technology, the infrastructure is there. We got to learn how to push a button or
right,
two
and
and
it
read a
sounds
live chat.
right. It sounds, but if you tried to teach my 87-year-old mother how to use a phone,
Hmm.
you would see that pushing a button is not as easy as it seems
Yeah.
when you know how. And I'm not as bad as she is, but I'm not a whole lot better. It's just this like emotional hurdle. Anyway, it was kind of like I compare it to Nephi being shown how to build a ship. Like I was told specifically, bit by bit, do this, then do this,
Okay.
then do this, call this person, go get that thing. And I was able to set up a podcast
Yeah.
with the Lord's help. And so how I came to this topic, yeah, was realizing it's a shocking thing to realize how wrong you've been and
Yes.
how ignorant you've been.
And that's one thing that's really, really difficult is when we recognize the traditions that we have. I think about when I was a young Mormon missionary, especially teaching Catholics who are generations of being Catholic. I'm literally saying everything that you think is your foundation for your life spiritually and socially for generations, I expect you to take me seriously enough
To let that
to
all
to
go.
be grateful for all the good, but let go of it all because there's something better.
Mhm.
Would the Lord be any different with us in saying,
Oh, I love
I'm
that.
going to show you your false traditions, and you're expected to have that same level of openness in being corrected?
Oh, that's great. And to me, it's just additional confirmations of the Book of Mormon. Like it talks to us all the time
Hmm.
about false traditions, about letting the scales of darkness fall from our eyes, about the pride in our hearts, about our desire to trust in the arm of flesh, about our desire to say all is well in Zion. Like, how can we really take the Book of Mormon seriously and not see these
Yeah.
possibilities, right? It also tells us we're under condemnation for taking lightly the things that we've been given in the Book of Mormon and not believing what the Book of Mormon says, which is like to me that's a confirmation of the
Yeah.
truthfulness of the Book of Mormon
And
because it's telling us exactly what we're doing.
I do feel that there's a very different work that's happening because I remember listening from the very beginning of the Mormon Stories podcast, pretty dedicated for the first 100+ episodes because there
Hmm.
was lots of very important interviews and hearing confirmation from LDS historians that would go on that show to pretty much confirm all of these things that are shocking to so many people about Latter-day Saint history. There's LDS apologists saying, yes, it's technically true, but let me put it in a better light. One of the things that has been happening, people have, well, I'll say this: Mormon stories more commonly has led far more people to, well, let me abandon my faith in Christ and in God. For the most part, I've had very close loved ones to where anything that connected them with the heavens, as far as feeling it, they gave it up. For myself, and I know for many others, this topic of Joseph Smith and polygamy doctrine, coming to section 132, they're rather intertwined. But it has resulted in a celebration of faith, in feeling a greater connection with the heavens, greater sense of duty.
You mean when people shed polygamy? Is that what you mean?
When people dig into, well, like for me, I remember as soon as I thought to myself, is it possible Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist? The Spirit came really quick saying, figure that one out. I'm like, okay. And it was a duty. And as I was diligent in researching that, it turned into life-changing experiences.
Oh, that's
because I had my come to Jesus moment when I was 15, but this was, man, it was the catalyst. And there's other people as well to where, oh, all of the rather horrifying behaviors which are said about Joseph Smith
might not be true.
They might not be, and it causes a greater connection with the heavens. Let me do this.
I came to it. Well, you go ahead and then.
No. You do yours, because we're going to get into a little bit of Q&A. Some of the questions are already inside of there. If you guys are watching this, questions down in the Q&A, as well as I've got some already that we're going to hit her with.
Okay.
The tough ones first. What are you drinking? That looks like a hot beverage, and I remember that being specified.
It's a little bit breezier out here than I expected, so it's a warm beverage.
It is warm, maybe a hot one.
Well, you're trying to act it. So if anyone's seen the mud water, I got into growing mushrooms, and I grow lion's mane mushrooms and cordyceps and the nutritious mushrooms. So there was that mud water recipe. The mud water you can buy online that's advertised, and it's like basically cocoa and I don't even know how to say masala chai.
I have no idea.
I'm going to say it wrong. Someone's going to be, and mushrooms. And I have to make it myself so I can do it without the black tea so that it's, I have LDS friendly mud water.
So we can confirm that there is neither hallucinogenics nor legal addictive stimulants.
There's no caffeine, or it's very, very good for you.
But okay, there we go.
I'm happy to share the recipe.
We're going to package it, and it's going to sponsor the next episode that we end up.
There you go. Mormon mud water. It should be my next project. It's just way too much work to make.
If you guys don't already know, Michelle Brady Stone's channel is 132 Problems. If you type that into YouTube, it shows up right away. Michelle, here's what somebody wrote already. I want to hear more about Michelle's experiences. Oh, let's see if you want to dive into this one with the hospitals and the mandates during the 2020 madness.
Okay.
Should we?
Maybe let's put a pause on that one.
Let's put a pause on that.
I'm happy to talk about it.
Let's do some more of the fun stuff first.
Polygamy's fun.
I want to hear more about her approach to mothering, because you already gave a little bit. You felt overwhelmed, and the heavens intervened, helping you feel a level of confidence.
My approach. Well, that wasn't about.
I would like to hear more about her approach to mothering. It seems like the gentle parenting approach, kind of like how I would love to hear about that, has evolved for her, and how she does it as a mother of 12 plus.
Yeah. Well, so I have to clarify. I'm always called a mother of 12. I'm a mother of 13, 11 living. So I guess the 12 comes from splitting the difference, because people think it, and that's a nice round number. But yeah, so I have 13 and 11 living.
But it's Baker's dozen on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Baker's dozen. And we lost our two little girls in 2021 and 2020 and 2021. I'll come back. I guess those connections. I was going to respond to something else first. Can I go out of order?
Yes, you go out of order. And I'll say this. Regarding the asking about the 2020 madness, we're going to save that for when you and I have our sit down and do our next part of the interview.
We'll keep them in
suspense. So that's going to happen.
Okay.
You had a thought, and I so rudely interrupted you.
Yeah, that's okay. Oh, I was just going to say, because it's so interesting how so many people come to this about Joseph Smith. And for me, the journey was completely different. And I know anyone who follows my podcast, I'm being repetitive. I apologize. Let me say this. But
this is my podcast.
Important. Yeah, there you go. You have to listen to me. No, you don't have to listen to me. I came to it really having Joseph Smith being somewhat irrelevant, because for me, it was kind of like, well, if Joseph Smith did it or Brigham Young did it, it's still a problem for me as a member of the church. Do you know what I mean? It still causes the same. And I couldn't know, it was, for me, the question was about God. My connection does not go through Joseph Smith to God. My connection is with God. And I was like, God, what is your truth? Who are you, and what have you established, and who do you see me as, and help me, and the answers were coming from God to me. So the connection for me was very much, what is God's truth? And I genuinely didn't know about, I genuinely believed all the stuff in history, because I hadn't dug into that.
We always treat it like it's established.
Right, right. So I came
The science
to
is settled.
right, and the science was settled about the truthfulness of polygamy too. But I genuinely came to I have known for over a decade that polygamy was never of God, and then it was through the course of the podcast, and I've known through my own research that whatever Brigham Young was doing was not the same as whatever Joseph Smith
Yeah.
might have been doing, right? But it was so it's interesting to hear other people that their journey was what did Joseph Smith do, and my journey was very much what did God establish,
Yeah.
and then came in the
Well,
on the coattails of that, what did Joseph Smith do?
give me a short version of this, because it's pretty standard. From the time that I was a young missionary fielding questions about polygamy, it was really easy for me to simply say, oh, it was such a small percentage of the church, and it was practiced anciently. People will simply refer to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You've got pretty thorough episodes. Can you give the 60-second synopsis of, is it a commandment that we can read in the scriptures anciently?
Oh yeah, no. And I'll say I didn't even have that apologetic approach to it. I full on was like, polygamy is the law of Zion. It's the law of the celestial kingdom. We're losing blessings that we can't live
What's
it
your
now.
problem,
I didn't
apostate?
even know. I didn't even know that people. I was so raised in it. I mean, that I didn't even know people had a problem with it. I was that committed. And so no, really short version, God has never commanded polygamy. God has always commanded the opposite. Any scripture we want to bring up, Nathan saying that God gave David's wives to him, is very easily explained and misinterpreted. Every single thing that 132 claims about polygamy is wrong if you actually go to the scriptures and read them. And so I'm happy to discuss it with anyone anytime.
And I think that's why a lot of people that I know that have gone through different sort of waking up process, a new love for the scriptures and a new set of eyes for the scriptures tends to be common themes. I recently reread one of the first public talks on the subject of polygamy from Orson Pratt, and he's describing a society of God in which, from the least to the greatest among all the men of the society, is the plurality of wives. And he says it with so much confidence, and he puts it in a really very nice light. Orson Pratt.
Oh wait,
Orson Pratt. And
he talks about the things that they bring up. If you want to have fun, I shouldn't even advertise, but if you want to have fun, I wanted to do a whole episode breaking down the books by Ogden Kraut, who's kind of like the number one polygamy scholar. He passed away now, and so he quotes these ancient sources. I did an episode on was Jesus a polygamist, that kind of goes into this. It's like, it's amazing to read the justifications they came up with and the utter bull.
But I have to. There's something that we have to be aware of, because when I was reading the words of Orson Pratt, he sounds compelling, even though I'm reading from something 150 years ago. It feels compelling, and if it weren't for knowing the scripture, I wouldn't know. Believed it. I wouldn't know that he was full of crap. There's some dude.
Well, Brigham Young talks about how good. Is it Orson Pratt? He says how good he is at making up scripture. Brigham Young's like, I'm pretty good at making up scripture, but that he's the key.
Yeah.
So they acknowledge that they just say whatever they have to, and they didn't have the people listening didn't have the benefit of searching up the scriptures. We have the tools that we have now are profound.
Yes.
In our ability to know scriptures like our ancestors couldn't.
Yeah.
They were much more.
And not only know scriptures, but there's certain people who have done the painstaking process of taking a whole bunch of information and distilling it to digestible ways of getting it, whether it's a YouTube video or some other form. Mm-hmm. I want to say this about confidence. I saw a guy give a public speech, and he's Pakistani, raised in Western schools I believe in England, and he was saying with so much confidence, as I was telling my friends, we were all gathered together, and I said, yeah, smoking, the research that's been done is like only so-and-so, only 1 in 500 will ever get cancer, and it's more related to such and such about diet. And he was so confident and so much swagger in the way that he said it. 6 of my friends started smoking, and I literally made it all up.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain level of confidence.
All you have to do is watch politicians for 10 seconds. Do we really think that people speaking with confidence on a podium where no one is fact checking them
easy.
are like, oh, he sounds honest, I should just believe everything he says? Like, no, that's not how it works.
In other words, there's the ability now, and I believe there's collectively for Latter-day Saints as a community, there's a greater level of accountability, because at this point, ignorance on the real history is a choice.
Oh, that's an well, yeah, I think you do have to exert yourself to avoid
Hmm.
ignorance. So a lot of people just don't care enough or
Yeah.
don't know the questions to ask. But the fact that we have so much available to us
Hmm.
as soon as we want to ask or as soon as we are troubled or to show other people and help them to care a little bit more is amazing. I agree. Like we're much less vulnerable to falsehoods than our ancestors were, which is really a blessing. And then I was going to answer your other question. Oh, I
No,
didn't
you're doing
answer the
awesome.
so the parenting question, I love that question, and I actually that's see, this is the funny thing. I was commanded to. I say commanded. I don't want to use the wrong word. I really was strongly told to do this podcast, and I keep just going. Really, God? Like I have so many things I want to share. This is what
I've
you
got a
want me
book to
to.
write. Can you
I've
just
got
wait a
like
little bit?
10, and I'm like, you want me to do it on polygamy, So I'm delving in, but I really love to talk about parenting. That's one of my passions, and relationships in general. Like the book that I'm dying to write right now that I'm praying, God, open the way for me to write this book is called Everything God Does Is Good. Because
Well,
that's kind of been my lessons of the last couple of years. So, oh, you were
no,
going to,
no. I was
or
gonna
you think,
say
am I good enough
I'm
there?
gonna no. I'm gonna give a shameless plug for our first interview because you shared inside of there where in your homeschooling with your kids, but you knew one homeschooled family growing up and they were different, and so it was good that they homeschooled. But now, as you're homeschooling, you are getting shown literally how somebody might come to know God and what the next steps are,
So,
and made the connection that God was showing you, even though you were in the process of teaching your children.
yeah. Like that's what I have learned is I think that we can put so much fear into our parenting and thinking that the product is the goal. If I'm a good like my children's status in my eyes, whatever that might mean, a faithful disciple of Jesus Christ or a college graduate and that's my report card,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And I really think that that can be, hi buddy, speaking of little kids, I've
he's
got my
allowed to
little
join.
5-year-old running
Do you want to
around.
say hi?
You what? Yes, you can. I
First, you
love
got to
you.
say
Can you
hi.
come say hi really
Come here, come
fast?
here, come here.
This is my littlest guy that's out here with us. Wave hi. We need a haircut. I love you.
Ah, he doesn't
Have
need a
fun.
haircut. He does not need a haircut.
He wants a haircut. Anyway, I think that for me, when I realized that the priorities are genuine relationships with my kids. And that is, I think, best built through mutual respect. I do expect my kids to treat me with respect, and I'll let them, like, I don't allow them to disrespect me, and I don't disrespect them. And I think, I mean, I do my best. I really try to approach things with curiosity. What is that child needing right now, or what are they feeling? And there's nothing I can say this fast to really help, but I do think that viewing our job as a parent is to learn as much as we can about this amazing spirit of God that's been given to us and what path God has for them, right? And to try not to get in the way any more than necessary. Does that make
Yeah, no,
sense?
I think it makes
Like,
perfect sense. We're
and
gonna
so yeah, so
Let's take a couple of these. Michael Barrett, I'm gonna be with you Friday morning.
see,
Uh,
he doesn't want to talk about the mothering part. I would talk about that the whole time.
oh, the whole time. It's just I still got to make up with my
I
mom.
still will do an episode on celestial education because I still love that, which is what you were talking about.
Okay, you didn't ask a question, but you said really nice stuff, Michael. Faith building to hear the testimonies of God, keeping His promises to lead diligent seekers of truth, and
That, yes, absolutely. God answers every question about wanting truth. If you ask questions about God, how do you want me to teach my children? God, what do you want me to like? God is quick with the answers when we are seeking to progress or seeking direction of
yeah.
how to best serve, I think.
I heard a testimony recently of a young Asian man raised Buddhist in the United States. Very dedicated. His spiritual journey put him on the path to Christ, and he started to hear the voice of the Lord. He changed his life. He wasn't ready to get baptized yet, even though he was hearing the voice of the Lord clearly. And the voice would speak to him and ask, because he didn't want to betray his parents. He thought that would just be too much to give up his Buddhist upbringing. And the Lord asked him, "Do you love your parents more than me?" And he avoided answering. And that question would keep coming back via the Spirit over the course of a couple of days till he finally exclaims out loud, "No, Lord, it's like I love you more than my parents." And the Lord spoke right back to him saying, Don't you know I love your parents more than you
Okay,
do?
good. I'm like, please tell me this isn't a story about choosing. I don't think the Lord ever wants us to choose between.
And that was such a comfort to him, where
Yeah, I love
he
that.
realized,
I
hey,
don't have to choose.
in other words, that perfect love, and when we place our foundation on that perfect love, it is perpetual. It is
Yeah.
more than we can receive in this life.
Yeah. Yep.
Mason Webb, love to hear again about your research showing
No
no
documentation of
documentation
sealing.
of sealing between Joseph and the living.
What?
That was episode 54. That was your
That was my
1 year
big,
anniversary
yeah.
episode.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yeah, anybody who hasn't already, um, go to find episode 54 on 132 problems. Give us the short breakdown on what that episode is going to be covering.
Okay. So, well, I want to do a shameless plug because more and more information is going to be coming.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm starting this series with some real experts. I have episodes that I'm so excited about.
When I saw your interview with Jeremy Hoop, I just saw his guitars in the background. I'm like, oh, I want to hang out with him. Yeah. Okay, but episode 54, no evidence of sealings, the documentation.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting. So the first piece is, right, that the first, like, actual claim we have of someone being Joseph's wife doesn't come until 1869, and they were sought out actively by the church trying to counter.
We need to produce.
They were motivated, right? And I have more episodes coming on the power structures in polygamous societies that would give these women no voice other than the voice that, you know what I mean? Like, we should take all of those with a million grains of salt. My episode on trauma bonding is useful for that one.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was fascinating to me to learn where all of the actual evidence comes from and how unreliable it is and illogical, and the dates don't match up, and there's nothing recorded in journals, and there are so many problems with all of it. And so the piece for me, and I guess, yeah, they'll go listen to that episode, but this piece isn't as compelling for other people as it is for me, but there have been a couple of different pieces that just gave me like the like confidence to be like, he was not a polygamist. And this was one of them, was the sealing piece, where Joseph explains very clearly in the Doctrine and Covenants what sealing is and how it's accomplished. And it's recording on earth what is recorded in heaven, and the books match up. And so what is that? And the fact that all of the sealings, the supposed sealings that he had, were not recorded. And some people have asked me if there's a record of his marriage to Emma and yes, they had a marriage license. They were recorded on earth as being man and wife, right? So that could be sealed in heaven, which I think is what he was doing. He didn't record any records of sealing with it. So he didn't seal on earth and seal on heaven. His own belief about sealing had nothing to do with polygamy. So it's bizarre to claim that he brought forth sealing and he was sealed to all of these women, but it all had to be repeated. It was all of the sealings of Joseph were done in 1846, in January and February.
There was so much repetition with Brigham Young. For example, within the first couple of years of them showing up here in Utah, he had the entire body of the church rebaptized
for several. Yeah. And so, Jedediah Grant was basically a martyr for the rebaptism. He died of pneumonia because he was baptizing people all November and December. And, I guess he died for his beliefs.
There we go.
But anyway, if Joseph had brought forth the sealing power, why would his work have to be redone after he was dead? And what's interesting is even the sealings that happened for Joseph and Hiram. I have my episode on Sunday is about Hiram Smith with Whitney Harding. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, even the sealings they did in the Nauvoo temple in 46 don't match up with the later claims of who was sealed to them. So it's all nonsense. It's complete nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I love inside of the chapter 36 of the Joseph Smith Teachings of the Presidents of the Church series of manuals, the Joseph Smith one, chapter 36, it's talking about temple ordinances. And the quote from Joseph Smith, this is almost exact word for word: the ordinances of the temple are from before the foundations of the world and cannot be changed or altered. All must be saved on the same grounds. And so when we take a look at there's quite a lot of evidence indicating that what Brigham Young introduced was not anything like what Joseph Smith was doing.
What's unfortunate is that quote wasn't changed and altered like the rest of the history was to make it all make. I mean, the history sure was changed and altered, wasn't it? Along with everything else.
Let's make it nice. But there's beyond a preponderance of the evidence that what Brigham Young was introduced in Utah was not what Joseph Smith had revealed in his 10-year presidency.
Well, and the Nauvoo temple was never finished.
And then what Brigham Young introduced, we've got almost like a few shadows left of it.
Right.
There's not much. There's not much in the LDS series of temple.
But in some ways, I find myself so thankful for all of the changes since Brigham Young, because I feel like taking out the polygamy stuff from the temple, taking out the sealing, we've removed some things which I was troubled by, because I'm like, we're changing them. But now I look at it and go,
yeah,
well, when we had a good thing, we turned it to a really bad thing. The changes now are getting further away from the bad thing. I don't know whether they're getting closer to the good thing, but they're at least getting further away from the bad thing. So at this point, I'm like, okay.
See, that comes to my mind because, all right, well, is what's practiced in the LDS temples, is it from before the foundation of the world and kept being changed or altered? Well, the fact that we continually change and alter it is an indication, well, we're doing the best that we can. This is something different.
What I like seeing is how, I know that people feel like it's all or nothing. I think that happens everywhere. People find out Joseph did all these horrible things, I'm leaving the church, and where I'm like, keep studying, study more, learn more, and I guess I feel the same way even about the Brigham's church, the Utah church. Is I like seeing how God has continued to work and inspire and do good, and how we've removed most of the blatantly awful false doctrines that were injected into the church in that period. And I like seeing that God is continuing, like I guess the scale tips toward truth.
Yes.
Away from error in most cases.
I have to mention this. So I was on Midnight Mormons a couple of months ago, and Jacob Hansen was on there, and they
he's my best buddy.
But it's interesting. They wanted to bring up, they positioned it this way as they turned it over to me to start giving remarks at first. We know that you don't like Brigham Young. So what is it that you don't like? And for me, I like everything that I learn about Brigham Young, other than his leadership and control. I like him just fine.
I do think there is something important about the natural man. Oh, no, what is it I'm trying to quote? That whatever it is, power corrupts, right?
Yeah.
And so I think Brigham could have been and was a good man. I think power corrupts, and he certainly became corrupted by power.
Here's what I pointed out, just bringing up that the church has completely abandoned Brigham Young's doctrines. I simply bring up the doctrinal innovations of Brigham Young. Blacks are eternally inferior, that women are property to be taken from one man and given to another. I brought up those items, the Adam God doctrine, not theory, doctrine.
Well, let's not leave out blood atonement, the crowning jewel.
The response from Jacob Hansen was, but the church has repented of that. It's like, why does the church have to
repent of what their prophet did? They said the church has
in other words, that was his response. And you could tell he was just making it up on the spot.
Oh.
The church has repented of that. It's like,
I'll have to go watch that again.
but it's a fun one. It's a fun one. Let me bring up this comment from B. Burl. I don't know who you are, but says, Michelle, you should interview Ogden Kraut's son, Kevin Kraut. Nice guy.
Yeah, I don't want to get personal. I have I hold Ogden Kraut's work in such low regard. I mean, when I read things in his books, like, look how committed God was to polygamy, that God had the Israelite warriors kill every man and woman and male child, but leave the girls leave the women, the girls alive, so that they could have plural wives. That's how committed God was to plural marriage. Like, he uses that as evidence of God's commitment to plural marriage, instead of seeing it for the horrific genocide and kidnapping and rape that it was. I'm like, if you can't see these girls and that entire society, but if all you see in these girls is evidence of the truthfulness of polygamy, I don't have respect for you. And so those, and it's rife with those kinds of claims that I'm like, that is the mindset, the polygamous mindset you get in, is that you cannot see other people as people. It's crazy. And then if we add on to it, speaking of not seeing people as people, the racist views that are still fully intertwined with polygamy.
Yes.
I just did a couple of episodes on that, and polygamists hold those January, those 1852 speeches in January and February that Brigham Young gave, they still hold them as sacrosanct.
Yes.
And that's an awful perspective to have. Awful.
Yeah. It's still
about women and other races.
From what I understand, it's for the influential polygamist sect, the United Apostolic Brethren.
AUB.
AUB, that is
Apostolic United Brethren.
Apostolic United Brethren. That's one of the core tenets, is recognizing that God is withholding the priesthood from them.
That's not just the AUB; it's also the FLDS and even the Kingstons are so into blood, meaning the purity of blood that they inbreed so much. There are so many, like the Kingston blood is the divine blood, right? And so, I mean, like every polygamist I know of. I don't know. I'd be curious. Are there Black polygamists in Mormonism?
Does anybody?
I know that,
I'm asking anybody in the chat. Do you know of any Black polygamists?
And I shouldn't say.
And we're not just talking about somebody who has a whole bunch of girlfriends.
Well, I need to listen to Marvin Perkins and say of African descent, because if you haven't listened to the episodes I did on the race and priesthood, please listen to those. But I know that there are a lot of like African Americans who are promoting polygamy as an ancient ancestral African thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Mormon polygamy. Are they open to people of African descent? I'd be curious to know, because I haven't met one.
Here's a question from Mason Webb. And Mason Webb is really good about continuing to put thought-provoking stuff online, continuing the discussion. Doctrine and Covenants, section 101, the parable of the redemption of Zion.
The current 101?
Yeah, current one. You're familiar with that?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So it talks.
Enough,
the Lord gives his servants a commandment. Here's a choice piece of land. Go to it, build a hedge roundabout, plant 12 olive trees, build a tower in the midst so somebody can be on the tower and see the enemy when they are afar off. But the servants, as they built the hedge, planted the 12 trees, they said to themselves, what need has my Lord of this tower? It's a time of peace. Wouldn't we be better off in the stock market, putting the money there? And while they were at variance one with another, the hedge is broken down, and it's the vineyard is taken over.
Okay.
So Mason puts, that's my lead up to Doctrine and Covenants, section 101. I see the tower of the enemy is polygamy. The tower of our Heavenly Father is the teachings of Jesus Christ. Faith, repentance, baptism of water, baptism of fire, second comforter. Any thoughts on whether the tower represents polygamy? The false, I think if I'm hearing you right, Mason, the false tower that was built up, that was to be torn down when the servants of the Lord return.
I think my initial thought, and you would have to speak more to this, I'll give you but I think it's hard to center on just one thing. I think that God established the perfect model of marriage, which truly is between one man and one wife.
Yeah.
I think one man and one woman. I think inclusiveness. I never want us to be unkind to polygamists or to any other people that don't fit easily within that. But I think that anything set up in opposition to that or in difference of that would be the tower. I think it's broader, because I think things like abortion and changing the definition of marriage and changing the definition of what a woman is, and and then also polygamy and all of these kinds of things would, for me, I think it would be broader than just polygamy. But I definitely think polygamy is I don't think the adversary cares which deception we cling on to, as long as we cling on to a deception, right? So it's on in that.
I feel right along those lines that it wouldn't be a one thing specific, even though it can be part of it. I think of how jealous Jesus is in guarding his doctrine, whether it's Nephi in Second Nephi chapters 31 and 32, saying, this is the doctrine of Christ. There's no more of this until Jesus manifests himself unto you in the flesh. Or whether it's Jesus himself in 3rd Nephi chapter 11, he says, after he teaches faith, repentance, water baptism, receive the gift of the Holy Ghost. If anyone teaches you more or less than this and establishes it for my doctrine, the same cometh of evil, and the gates of hell are open to receive them.
Okay.
And
so anything we set up in opposition to that, or instead of that, or in addition to it, is really antichrist, because it's just different than what Jesus Christ established.
In other words, there's some very clear suggestions in the Book of Mormon that there's high priests after the Holy Order of God who have had probably similar experiences to Nephi in chapters 11 through 14, as well as Isaiah and others. High priests after the Holy Order of God, they're shown the mysteries of God until they're shown them in full. That's not the doctrine of Christ.
Right.
There's individuals who have exercised faith to be able to receive that for themselves.
Well, that's why I think that the doctrine of Christ, like, if you think about it, it's cool. And I know that I'm repeating things that everyone knows, but still, the first principles of the gospel, right? That faith, repentance, baptism, and then the gift of the Holy Ghost. And that's because those are the universal. Everybody's the same there. And once you have the gift of the Holy Ghost, you can receive your own individual
Okay.
messages, right?
So
So we don't all have it in common after that point, because you will receive different direction from the for your life. Like, you have different things that the Lord is going to tell you to do or to work on than I have, right? Not that they'll be in opposition, but just we have different paths
yeah,
of growth that we are on. So, and in the question of what God established, like what you look at how much effort God put into the establishment of marriage, starting with Adam and Eve, starting with the beginning, how many times it's been repeated. Noah, I mean, we can go on and on and on. Then repeated again in with Lehi and the Book of Mormon, and like the pattern is so set, and the teachings are so consistent that I think it does make God weep. That, like, here I reestablished this, and look what they did.
yeah. Well, and you already mentioned the perfect order of marriage, to where in all of the situations to where polygamy for bringing up seed, where that would have happened, it's monogamy there. Whether it's
Absolutely.
Adam and
Every
Eve in the
time God
garden,
wants to establish a new
whether
people.
it's all of a sudden we got a group of people going over in one boat over to the promised land, it's strictly monogamy.
And they're all commanded to raise up seed.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. In Noah's time, like all the different situations, God's commanding monogamy.
Absolutely. God is commanding raise up seed through monogamy, because that is God's means. And
because unless the Lord commands you, you will hearken unto these fables about David and Solomon.
Right. Right. And there was something else I was going to say. I'll have to think of what it was while you're looking for it.
No, Mason's got good stuff inside of here, and I think that'll be grounds for a longer conversation. Phil Chavez, Lorraine Chavez, to be healed of memory. Oh, I think that's okay. I think that's something different than what we're doing here. Let me I feel like anything else we should cover, because I feel like we're hitting good stuff. You can put another question, but I'm going to put the landing gear down.
Oh, we're almost done. Okay.
We're 41 minutes into this.
Okay.
See, wasn't that fun?
Yeah. I do think that let's see. Well, yeah, it's like we've just scratched the surface, but I do think that the better we know the scriptures, the better we know the history, the more clear the picture becomes, right? The best way to believe in polygamy is to be completely ignorant about it. And the best way to believe in Joseph's polygamy is to be completely ignorant about it. So what is encouraging to me and really exciting is to see what the Lord is doing, that we are getting so much more history, so much more knowledge being poured out on us, right? And the more access we have to history, the more knowledge we gain, the clearer the picture becomes that polygamy never was of God, and that Joseph and Emma were not polygamous. And I think that's exciting. Like, a lot of people just want to ignore one side of the. I know in the conversation with Mark Tensmeyer, I brought up the peacemaker. I think it's the peacemaker.
Yes.
And he just like, oh, blah, I don't want to talk about that. And I'm like, no, that's an important piece. Because
that was published though during Joseph Smith's lifetime.
Yeah.
And it was.
It says
a lot of
Joseph
people
Smith big on the cover, big as the printer, as the basically the publisher, the printer.
Yeah.
And I found it, and I was like, why would Joseph Smith print this? And it was before I was committed. I mean, it was before I had come to believe that Joseph was not involved in polygamy. I really thought for a long time Joseph was involved to some degree, got deceived by it in some way, and that's why he lost his life. That was where I was coming from. So as I was reading this, I was so disappointed that he published this, but it was evidence that he was at least complicit. But I was going, he's smarter than this. Like, this is bad. It was so stupid.
It was fraudulently attributed to Joseph.
And then you find out that he completely disavowed it and said, I did not I can't remember what he calls it. Rubbish, trash, nonsense.
Well, see, it's interesting that the Laffertys from Under the Banner of Heaven, that was one of the documents highly influential among them. The peacemaker and their belief that it came from Joseph Smith.
Well, see, and why that's important evidence is because, and it's only one random piece that I just happened to think of. There are so many like this. It is the evidence of the conspiracy. So the people that want to claim that Joseph was a polygamist want to throw it out and ignore it. Where I'm like, no, that's important. We have what is piling up, what is breaking down is the actual evidence of Joseph's polygamy, because it like it's so weak. What is piling up more and more and more is the evidence of the conspiracy to paint Joseph as a polygamist.
It puts the church in such a difficult situation, because in order to keep the polygamy narrative alive, they have to prove Joseph Smith a flagrant liar.
Absolutely. It's really a tricky one.
It was so fun.
It really, like, the Joseph Smith Foundation should be called the Brigham Young Foundation. And, in a lot of ways, Brigham Young is the founder of our current church understanding. And we need to let God be the founder of it and, get closer to Joseph Smith.
Let's do two more of these. Angry Mormon. I'm not sure if I believe it. You aren't using enough all caps or exclamation marks to believe that you really are an angry Mormon. Wait, love to see you both. Can you help me understand 2nd Nephi 15:27 through 29? We're going to do this and at least one other before we end things. Let's do this. 2nd Nephi 15.
I just lost my library.
Because it's Isaiah chapters. Oh, we like the Isaiah chapter. While I'm pulling this up, I have to point out that young missionaries serving in one of the more dangerous parts of Southern California. And they knock on a door to go tracting, and the guy opens up with a gun pointed right at them, say, "You guys get out of here now." These 2 young missionaries, they took off running, and the guy takes a shot at them. One missionary gets hit in the backpack. He falls to the ground, and they get up and they keep running. As soon as they feel like they're safe, they realize he'd been shot, but he looks in the backpack, and the bullet hit a copy of the Book of Mormon. But it turns out the bullet couldn't make through the Isaiah chapters either. Okay, 2nd Nephi 15, verses 27 through 29. I'm going to do it just because I'm in the mood. None shall slumber, nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Whose arrows shall be sharp, and all their bows bent, and their horses' hoofs shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Their roaring like a lion, and they shall roar like young lions. Yea, they shall roar and lay hold of the prey, and shall carry away safe, and none shall deliver. I gotta look at it in context.
I know. Well, I've done some studies on this. Yeah. It's really hard for me to get one isolated verse and read it without, like, for me, I would spend several days looking up all of the, and I know some of the things I've learned about this in the past. I think that the lions roaring through is actually really important. And so I'm not going to address this in isolation right now without a lot of study and a reason to do it and some inspiration.
What happens to me is always certain connections. Where do I recognize this from others? And I think of the Savior using nearly identical language in 3rd Nephi chapters 21 through 23, where he's talking about Lehi's descendants rising up with power to take back the covenant land. Mm-hmm. So that's my first thoughts. In other words, I don't have any official explanation other than recognizing some of the patterns. Mm-hmm. If you need to go, it's okay. Okay, MBW. Have either of you ever interacted with an ex or anti-Mormon who left the church but came back at least to God and the Book of Mormon due to knowing that Joseph Smith was monogamous? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's actually part of the goal here is that's what I think is so unfortunate, is that the lies separate people from truth, right? And so all of like it's tragic to see how pernicious those lies still are and how much damage they continue to do. So I have talked to some of my people in my family who I love who are atheists now based on all of this, and I haven't personally like you get to a point where the whole question about Joseph Smith is just irrelevant and doesn't matter. And so when they get to that point, I have talked to them a little bit about what if he wasn't? What would that mean? Would that be interesting to you? And they're kind of like, I don't care, because they get to that point. So I think
we can't point to Joseph Smith. Place. We can help correct if there's false history. But I know that people don't respond to whether it's pointing to the brethren who lead the church now or whether it's pointing to Joseph Smith as a chosen servant. What does connect is if there is, unless somebody has deliberately hardened themselves, and I think that's more and more rare from anybody that I interact with. If they recognize a loving call from God, the other pieces will fall into place because the issues that they may have now, all of a sudden they consider, oh, perhaps I was taught falsehoods about Joseph Smith's history.
I do. In response to this question, I think there's tremendous power there because, like I said, for a long time, I thought the only question mattered about God. What does God want? And I think that is the more important question. Yeah. But the question about Joseph Smith matters too because it's the Book of Mormon, the establishment, the restoration. Yeah. And that really is like when you strip that away, then they come up with, the bank and counterfeiting and money digging. I mean, the claims are really, really weak other than the polygamy claim for Joseph being a villain. Right. Okay. And so I think there's huge power there.
Lightning gear officially down. Michelle Brady Stone, your channel is
132 Problems Revisiting Mormon Polygamy.
Geez Louise. Not like Jay-Z's 99 Problems. Anywho, thank you so much. Adios, y'all. Share it with others. We're going to be back to have a full conversation regarding your spiritual journey. I don't know how to stop this.
Apparently, the landing gear's not down yet. One more question. I'm just kidding.
End stream. Adios.